Hello, I'm Summer Ward and this is Amy Matthews, and we will be talking to you today about the question we've been asking: is there a correlation between solar activity and the number of muons reaching Earth?
So we were also interested in finding out in looking for muons, and we used the TimePix chip to do this. Muons come from interactions between cosmic rays in the upper atmosphere. And our question is, are these cosmic rays coming from the sun or from outer space more? And
So again, we used a TimePix chip, which we had set up at the school observatory. The TimePix chip produces these frames as shown, and muons are characterised by these long straight tracks. We also decided to count shorter straight tracks, which we believe is where a muon has passed through the chip at an angle, so it hasn't disturbed as many as the pixels.
Last year, a bunch of students set up a TimePix chip for 60 days, 16 hours a day, with exposures of 60 seconds. So we ended up with a lot of frames for each exposure. We're talking about thousands of frames here, and this year we began to go through these frames, looking for muons, trying to see these muon straight tracks, and then we collected data from a Royal Watch website on solar activity, which it takes into account fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field to account for solar activity, and we compared that with our muon count to see what we got.
So some challenges we faced were that we didn't have many runs of data where data was collected every single day for a period of time. That meant it was quite hard to account for different daily or seasonal changes in where we were. It also meant that any fluctuations we did have, we couldn't necessarily attribute just to the time. If we talk about our data now, so we've now correlated our maximum activity that we had with our muon count, and surprisingly there doesn't seem to be a correlation between the number of muons that we found and the maximum activity for that day.
So as you can see here, there's very little and probably no correlation between the two, and also on this one. And from this, we concluded that it's probably because the majority of the cosmic rays are coming from outer space and not coming from the sun, which means that we didn't see this correlation, but it's difficult to judge, seeing as we do not have that much data. To come to a more conclusive conclusion, we would need to analyze a lot more data, and we might, if we analyze more data, see a very weak correlation between the two. And there's also more potential things we can do with this data, looking at, for instance, the position of the Earth in orbit and seeing if there's any correlation there. So there's a lot of potential with this data.
With extra data, we might be able to pinpoint a place or like an object in space, maybe due to the Earth's orbit, of where these high-intensity rays are coming from. But that's for the future and for another group to carry on with. Thank you very much for listening.
For the group that just spoke, surely if you were trying to get muon count for solar activity over time, solar activity would be strongest during the day, obviously, on a bright sunny day when the sun is out. So can you compare the muon count of the day versus the night?
That would be something to do. Our count was like the run of frames was taken for 16 hours, so that's like moved from day to night. So there shouldn't be an effect of that on our data, but it's definitely something to think about. And of course, if there is cosmic rays are accounting for these muons as opposed to just solar activity, then possibly that has an effect.
Okay, another question? Yeah, there's one right in front of you there, Steve.
I've got a question for your group, and you said at your group here, you said your data logging system started to log your information wrong at one point. So what was that like for you as a group to know that it had been collected wrong?
Well, we think that we saw lots of straight tracks on the data, which are the tracks of muons. We know that already. And then when we looked them into the TAPAS algorithm, we saw that they were being classified as protons, which we thought was quite interesting. It didn't really, we didn't feel it was a bad thing. We just thought that that's quite interesting. So we did some further investigations into what it saw as protons. And then we didn't really have that much of an emotional effect on us. We just thought that that's quite interesting.
But you showed perseverance in finding the answer to the unknown. So I think that's very well done. Okay, let's thank our two muon groups. Thank you.